Hi, Paula. Welcome to Mom on the Verge.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me, Katie.
Of course. Thank you so much for being here. So, I wanted to start off the show, as I always do, with talking about asking you a little bit about your backstory and how you came to do what you do and be in the process that you're in. So, you and I just chatted a little bit before I started the recording and saying that you've really been in the process of a healing journey over the past 4 or 5 years. So, wanted to give our listeners a little background on that, how that came to be, and where you are in that process.
Sure. So I was in corporate America, working for one of the large financial institutions. In fact, I had just quit that corporate job a year ago, last May, after more than 25 years, to pursue more purposeful work. So when my journey first started, I guess I would say it first started with yoga, a yoga practice. And that just, got me in my body and started to just make some changes for me. It got me out of my head and into my body and just opened me up some. Um, but the bigger milestone in my healing journey, I would say, is when I was trained and attuned to Reiki energy healing. And I was invited to go on a retreat to learn Reiki and to Yandara Yoga Institute in Baja, Mexico. And I didn't know anything about Reiki. When I was invited to this, I knew just that it was energy healing. But I thought, well, I'm not going to say no to a beach in Mexico. So I said yes. And I thought, well, I'll be able to do some research before I go on my trip. And of course, I got busy with my corporate job because I was always overworking there. and and I didn't get to research it. So I went into that like knowing next to nothing about it. And I had a big bang awakening, a spiritual awakening. Like I remember when I was getting attuned to Reiki level 1, like I felt myself coming back home to myself. I literally like felt it in my heart. And tears were just streaming down my face. And then I got attuned to Reiki level 2 and then Reiki level 3. And it just kept expanding and shedding layers and healing and healing. And in that 7 days, I was a completely changed person. After that 7 days, I came home from that retreat and I didn't talk the same. I didn't look the same. I didn't dress the same. I didn't eat the same. And I didn't care about the same things. And even my teenage kids were like, "Who are you? We don't even know who you are anymore." And I said, "I'm finding that out too." um, and I came home. I took more Reiki training here in Minneapolis, where I live, and there was more healing and shedding of layers. I went back to Yandara and got my life coaching certification. And that was just another like a bigger awakening experience for me. And just my teacher was just this beautiful example of everything I wanted to be, just this grace and this love and this peace emanating from the inside out. And so it was just this beautiful experience for me to go through that. And as I went on about my journey, I just became so misaligned with corporate America, and I just couldn't. I got to the point where I couldn't do it anymore. Where I was like crying every day after work. I held kind of a bigger leadership position. I ran organizations. It was very demanding job with lots of stress, and I wasn't aligned with it anymore. I just couldn't do it. And so my wife and I had talked about me leaving corporate America because I was the breadwinner and it would mean selling the house and all these big changes for us. And she was on board and said, "Okay, let's have a runway to that." And when I was kind of at my wit's end, it was probably a little bit before the end of that runway was originally planned, but I had to jump ship. And kind of what helped me jump ship actually was this organic mushroom farm that kind of came in and swept me out of corporate America. So I worked there for a hot minute, and I felt like it was more purposeful in terms of healing people in the earth, and that the owner of that company ended up being abusive. And so that was the universe showing me I had healed from so much abuse by that time. And it was the universe showing me this in my life again and asking, are you going to choose this or are you going to choose different? And I chose different, and I quit. And the reason why I had done that short stint at the organic mushroom farm is because I was too scared to really step out into my own business and build it. I had already started it right after I had been attuned to Reiki the first time. I came home and opened my business right away, but I just didn't have, working in that corporate job, enough time to grow it. So anyway, when I quit the mushroom farm, I immediately bought a tent and I went out and I signed up for like county fairs and street markets and expos and farmers markets and all these things. And I just went out to the community and started building my business in the community. And it worked. It was slow, but it worked. And I started teaching after that. I went through we went through the same coaching program, Katie, earlier this year, a 3-month kind of intense coaching program to sort of rewire us and help us and support us. And that was another, big shift and raise in my vibration. And during that class or that coaching program, I created my newest workshop, which is a workshop on cultivating self-love. And so it ties in with my coaching work, my coaching practice, and I'm just loving it. And so that's a little bit about, does that kind of cover?
Yeah, that does. I
Where I
mean,
come
that
from?
covers a lot. It's all fascinating, and I want to go back to a couple of pieces and dissect them a little bit. So I also am a yoga teacher, and I came to yoga also kind of in a difficult place in my life. I had developed chronic migraine, and I was really just, it was just a really difficult time. There was a lot of darkness. There's a lot of depression. There was nothing that was helping my symptoms at all. And I had been called to yoga throughout my life. I just felt this kind of, I don't know, I don't really know how to describe it other than a pull, like this internal pull towards it. But I had been in it and out of it because when you have young children, it's hard. Yoga studios often don't have childcare, so I would go when I could, get myself some childcare and make it to the studio. But when chronic migraine hit, I really that pull became much stronger for me,
Mm-hmm.
and I really took a deep dive into the practice. And again, I didn't really know why. It was just an internal calling that I chose to follow.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking actually just this morning how I could never have imagined how my life has changed. I could never have foreseen the changes in my life from simply making that one decision.
Wow.
And
Thank you.
different from you, your decision, your change seemed to be much quicker. Mine has been a very slow evolution over the past 10 years. So you and I differ in that aspect, but it's just amazing when you follow that internal call. You really just can't imagine where it's going to lead you, and it leads to so many beautiful, amazing things. But so often we just don't pay attention to it. But I am a firm believer in the practice of yoga. And when I say that, I don't just mean the physical asana practice. I mean the philosophy of yoga and being
Absolutely.
enmeshed in the studying and the learning of the philosophy along with the asana. I mean, I do love the asana as well. But I think the true benefits come when we take it deeper than that. But often, as was for me, and I think for many people, it starts with the asana, and then it will gradually evolve into something more than that.
Yes.
Yes, but it's been truly life altering for me. And the longer I stay with it and the more I study it, the more I see how it just really relates to every single solitary facet of our human existence. And I want to spread that knowledge because I think so many people could benefit from it.
Yes, I'm
Yes.
called to become a yoga teacher too. I just haven't done it yet, but I agree with everything that you said.
Yeah.
Um,
And on the flip side, I've been called to become a Reiki practitioner. So we have
oh,
that both in common as well. So So, well, let's first maybe give our guests who maybe are not that familiar with what Reiki is. Can you break it down to give them an explanation of kind of like an image in their mind of what happens during a Reiki session?
Sure. So, gosh, Reiki is such a beautiful practice. It's a gentle healer and really just a powerful tool that I love having in my tool belt. So Reiki is like a Japanese energy therapy technique for stress reduction and relaxation, that also promotes healing. And so, like during a session, excuse me, first, if it's the client's first session, I would, invite them in and talk to them a little bit about Reiki, tell them how it works, which the simplest explanation is Reiki works through channeling and intention. I'm channeling the Reiki energy as the practitioner with the intention of giving it to the receiver. And I always like my clients to set an intention to receive. So there's that joint intention, which is just more powerful. But I talk to them a little bit before before we get started and let them know, the different things that they might experience during a Reiki session. And go through some of those things, ask them, what brought them in, is there something that they want to focus on for their session? And then from there, the receiver lays on a massage table, fully clothed and on their back. And their job at that point, I get it, I take a little bit of time to get us centered in and really let people arrive on the table because they're usually coming in from the busyness of life. And so I take a few minutes to really ground us in and get us into our hearts and into the receptive mode. And then really the receiver's job from there is to just like relax as much as possible. And if they fall asleep, even better, because as adults, even if we're setting an intention to receive and we're open and our hearts are open, there's still, unconscious things that are happening, maybe small blockages or whatever. And if you're sleeping, then you're just wide open. And so then, I, as the practitioner, go through using, Reiki's an intuitive practice. And so it's working with, spiritually guided life force energy and the receiver's highest self. And so I just am listening to my intuition about where to go around the person. I feel things up the center of my body. And so I can tell where someone needs Reiki by what's going on in my stomach, my heart, and my throat. And I just give Reiki, channel Reiki for the receiver for the bulk of the time of the session. And then I save a little bit of time at the end to hold space for the client to talk about what they experienced or ask questions. And then if they're comfortable, I can also relay anything that came through for me. Sometimes I receive messages that are coming in so strong that I'll say them out loud. But for me, that isn't one of the intuitive senses that is that developed for me. And so I don't get many like messages that are like, say this out loud right now. But yeah. And getting off the table after a Reiki session, the most common thing that people say that they experience is just this deep feeling of peace and calm. Like all the stress energy is wiped away. And they like have this just deep calmness about them. There's lots of other, experiences people have too. It's a reliever of PTSD and physical pain and discomfort, mental and emotional issues. And it's just a really overall mind, body, spirit healer. I mean, I've had people on my table before go into a past life, go into them remembering when they made the contract to come onto the earth in this body. And like, it just depends on the person. It's unique to everybody. And then some people experience nothing except for just deep relaxation and calm throughout the whole session. Some people get visuals. It just is a whole range of things.
So that's so great. And just so that listeners also know, generally speaking, Reiki is a hands-off practice, right? So your hands are more over the body versus specifically on the body, correct?
I think that differs like from practitioner to practitioner. I do a mix of touch and work in the aura. for every session that I do, because I'm called sometimes to just lay hands on. It's no massage or anything like that. It's just, if I am touching, it's just a very light laying of the hands on. And so, like I said, I do a mix. Like I do work in the aura quite a bit, especially over like the heart chakra and the root chakra, because those are, the private part areas of a person's physical body. But if it's okay with them, I'll put crystals there and things like that. Um, but I'm typically called to do some touch, like especially on the head and some of the lower parts of the body as well.
Okay. So my first experience with Reiki was at a yoga studio that I was taking classes at, and the owner of the studio often taught classes as well. And she also was a Reiki master. And so sometimes during Savasana, she would come around and just do a little Reiki on our heads, just
I
really
love
just on
that.
our heads. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had zero experience with Reiki. I didn't know what it was. So I didn't have any judgments about it because I really didn't even know what it was. And all of a sudden I could feel the energy, which sounds
Yes.
strange to someone who has never experienced it, doesn't know much about these types of practices, or really just the energy, the concept of our energy. It sounds very strange, but I would feel warmth. She would not be touching me at all. There was
Right.
no actual touch, but I would feel heat, or I would feel sensations in my head, which I call, the movement of energy. That's what it feels like to me. And I remember being like, what the heck is
Yeah.
this? Like, this woman didn't
See?
even touch me. This is wild. So then I have gone and had full Reiki sessions since then, and it is just as wild. It is truly amazing how energy can be manipulated just with intention, just with
Yes.
choosing to direct the energy. It is extremely relaxing, just as you said. And everything you described was my experience too. A little conversation before, a little conversation after, laying on the table. Overall, not a ton of touching, but yes, sometimes crystals, sometimes hands-on. And so what I then began to notice is my ability to feel energy in my own body. So it's so
Yes.
funny when you're not attuned to something, it's always there. You're just not paying attention to it.
Yep.
And my English teacher in 10th grade he used to call it the Purolator effect. He had never heard of Purolator. It's apparently a company that has large trucks. And he'd never heard of it before. And then somebody brought up the company Purolator to him. And he's like, "What? I've never heard of this company." And then all of a sudden, everywhere he went, he saw
Yeah.
Purolator trucks, right? So the Purolator trucks were always there. He was just not attuned to them. He was not recognizing them. And this happens in so many areas of our life, including something like energy. So I'm a nurse. And so as a nurse, we do a lot of hands-on with our patients.
Yes.
And I can feel the energy of when I'm touching my patients and how to kind of therapeutically touch them, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It
Um,
makes sense. You're in their aura. You can feel it. Yeah.
yes, yes. And so I feel really called now to also be trained in Reiki, just because I feel it. I feel that energy so strongly. But this really, I lived most of my life without feeling it until I was probably in my mid 30s.
Ditto.
So
Yeah.
I just think it's amazing how much is there that we don't even recognize until we bring awareness to it.
Oh my gosh, isn't that so true? I love that you want to learn it as a nurse. I know several nurses who have gone through trainings, or I happen to be on a retreat and met them or whatever. I just know there's a lot of nurses, getting trained in Reiki so that they can use it, so that they can also help themselves with it, right? Uh,
Right.
because even during a session, like as a practitioner, I'm receiving Reiki as I'm giving it. So that's one of the things I love most about it. But the medical community is recognized. I mean, there have been studies done now, scientific studies done on Reiki, and it's 80 or 83% of people are, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, just it's legitimate. It's a legitimate complementary therapy, and the
Right.
medical.
Evidence-based is what we call it in the medical community, evidence-based therapy. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And it's getting recognized and legitimized, I guess. Not that it
Yeah.
needs legitimacy, but that's the society we live in.
It is. And I actually happen to really love that intersection of science and mysticism,
Same.
because it's just kind of proving what we intuitively know, but it is nice to have it's nice to have that quote unquote proof so that portions of the population who may dismiss the practice can't dismiss it anymore because we have evidence that it is effective.
Exactly. When I have someone who is questioning or doubting or something, one of the things I go through is the science, right? The atom is made of 99.99999% energy and 0.0001% particle, yet we put all of our everything, all of our stake and everything on that 0.0001% particle. And so I give them a little bit of the science behind it. I give them more than that, but and then I say, and I invite you to get on the table because there's just no denying it once you've experienced it for yourself.
Yes, correct. Correct. There is no denying it. And then taking it out into your own life and playing with it. So I
Yeah.
love the concept of play. We talked about a lot about this in that coaching program that you and I were in back in the spring, and how as adults we forget to play.
Mhm.
And I love playing with all of these concepts and just, I'm not sure. How do I feel about that? Well, let me suspend my disbelief and just be open and play and see what happens. I'm not saying I believe in something or I don't believe in something. I'm saying I'm going to just, fiddle around with it and see what comes up. So when you wind up, taking that idea of everything's energy out into the world, you can really play with that concept in a lot of ways in the world, and it becomes really fun. It's a game and it's really fun.
And thank you for saying it in that way with the play, because that just gave me new perspective. Wow, thank you.
Yeah, of course, of course. So coming back then to so like I said, my transition, my evolution has been a much slower process than what you experienced. So I would imagine for your children and your wife that was shocking
Mhm.
and difficult to swallow, right? You go away and a week back later you come back as this totally different human. So how has that impacted those relationships? And do you have advice for our listeners? Because I really this show is about encouraging women to step into their authenticity and claim their life, their passion, their purpose, their ability to follow their intuition and not be derailed by anyone in their life. But yet that can sometimes come with some rough patches for relationships where you were operating under a certain paradigm, and now that paradigm is shifting and the people in relationship with you are feeling that shift and maybe not loving it so much because it's a change and it's scary. So do you have any advice for our listeners, or what was your experience and what did you learn from it?
Sure, I can talk about some of those bumps or
Yes.
challenges. At first, because I would just say overall, what rocked the boat the most is me quitting my corporate job, because that's all everyone had ever seen me do. And it affected our finances. And so there was a lot more no's instead of yeses for what the kids wanted and things like that. So, at first there wasn't a big impact when I had my big sort of bang awakening and came back after that week and I was a different person. Like everybody was okay. Like it changed the vibration in our house actually. And it relaxed the people around me because I was more relaxed. I was responding instead of reacting. I was, I was just at this more calm. I had this peace and equanimity on the ends coming from the inside out. And so in the beginning, it was all really fine because I had stayed in my corporate job. And then I started getting these pings to like move and like and then, like out of the country kind of a thing. And so I
Ooh.
started, and I don't hide these things from my kids, and so I was saying these things out loud, and that's when they really started to feel the instability. It felt really unstable to them, to hear mom saying that.
And how old were your kids at this time?
They were, oh geez, was it like 13 and no, 14 and 16, I
Okay.
think. Yeah, or 13 and 15 maybe. Um, no, they were a little bit older. Anyway, they were teenagers, and that that uh made my son gravitate more toward his father. Um, and so I don't know, it kind of, I think he would have done that anyway, because he's a boy and he's going to resonate more with his dad as he's going through his teenage years. And I get that. But it happened, I think, sooner than it would have, or differently than it would have, had I not been talking about moving out of the country. So it made my son gravitate toward his dad. And so I felt a loss in that. And my daughter was, just like, she felt like the rug was ripped out from underneath her. She wasn't done with high school. She wanted me to see her through high school and even beyond. Wanting me here in this house, not wanting us to move at all. And so that created some stress and tension between us for sure. And a lot, like I had mentioned before, a lot of no's with the finances and things. And that was difficult for her, because I usually just, I don't know if that served them or not, but I give them, they pretty much have everything they want, save for a few things. And then for my wife, it's been a little different. Like, when I started talking about wanting to move out of the country, was on board with that, was a little bit scared, but was on board with it. And, but then like after I quit my corporate job and was done with the mushroom company and was really focusing on my business, which she helps with. So there was a little bit of strain on her because she had the corporate job and she was helping me with some things in my business. But then I was like, oh, well, I started to just follow my heart's desires. And so I would, go off and say, okay, well, my heart feels like I want to try this. And so I would go try this. And then I want to try that. And so I go take this training, or whatever it is, I tried several different things. And for her, the way she describes it is, I feel like I'm strapped to a rocket ship and I'm just hanging on for dear life. And so for a while there was kind of flow with that. And then it just kind of ebbs and flows. It dips and peaks. And, more recently, especially because of just things we had going on this year, I wasn't focusing as much on the business. And so our finances have been affected by that. And it was just more impactful. She feels unstable and insecure, like we don't have footing underneath us. And so we're working through that. And what I've done, especially with my wife, is just pour love and Reiki on the whole situation. Like every time it comes into my mind, every time I touch her or hug her or snuggle with her or kiss her, I am just pouring love and Reiki on the situation. And it's starting to loosen again and flow. And she's, because she felt like I was a rocket, she was really gripping down hard on the 3D and all the things that we've always known, and all of the old thoughts and all of the old ways and all of the old, like, needing everything to be known and planned. And I'm like, wait, we need unknown, because that's where the magic happens. Let's let this be an adventure. And so she was kind of on the opposite end of that. And that's what's loosening up. And so just in the last few days, actually. And so it's been really, really wonderful to feel and to feel that happening and to see her coming through that and to kind of go, wow, okay, this is maybe going to work, you know?
Wow. And how about your children? Are they coming around at this point, or they need a little more time?
Well, okay, so my daughter's off in college now, and that was quite a rocky road to get her there. Um, but and so she is better. But she wants us to stay here in the house that we're like getting ready to put on the market tomorrow. And so she's coming to terms with the fact that when she comes home for college, for holidays and things, it's not going to be to this house. It might be to us in another house here in Minneapolis where we live, or we might be moving out of state. We're not quite ready to go out of the country yet, we've decided. But we might be going out of state because my wife's mom was diagnosed with cancer and they live in Kentucky.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. It's pretty far along and a big thing, like such a big tumor that they aren't really able to treat it other than with immune boosters right now. So it's pretty, like I said, far along and not a great situation. So, my daughter is getting through that. She's coming home in a couple of weekends and she's got to pack up some stuff. And so I'm sure we're going to be working through some tears and some more things then. And I'm just telling her, I'm still here to support you. I'm still here. I'm still your mom. I'm just in a different house, maybe in a different state.
Yeah.
And if she wants to come home to Minnesota, she can come home to her auntie's house or her grandma's house and be local with her friends or whatever. It would, kind of break my heart a little bit if she didn't come to visit me on the holidays and she came here, but that's her path and that's her choice. And I have to let her have her experience and I have to love her no matter what,
Yeah.
My son is doing great. He just, I don't know, is coming into himself, I guess I would say. And so he just turned like a big corner and I'm so proud of him and he's doing great. And he's sort of, how I described how he kind of gravitated toward his dad and I felt a loss. He's back now with me, but still really wanting to be with his dad more, but still back with me. So I love where that is. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, overall, the overarching theme that I'm hearing between all of those people is the push pull. Like, you as moms, I think that we often feel that if we follow our hearts or do the things that we want to do and that they are in conflict with what our children want us to do, because or our partners want us to do, that we are being selfish and we shouldn't do it. And I think a lot of times that's how women live their lives, is by sacrificing their true heart's desires over and over and over again. And to me, that's like death by 1,000 tiny paper cuts.
Oh my
that
God,
you
I
are
so am with you. Yes.
right. You're like literally killing your soul by repeatedly making all of these small choices over and over and over again that always put the other in front of yourself. But it's really hard because as partners and parents, we feel like we're selfish if we're doing it, but we also want to make those people in our lives happy, right? We want to please them. We want to be the good mom or the good spouse. So it's a really hard position to be in. So I want to make sure that we're like really clear on that, because someone out there who's listening to this, who has not started to take the shift in mindset that you and I have taken, might hear your story and think, oh my gosh, she's so selfish. She's being so selfish. How could she do that? But ultimately, if we do what's best for ourselves, those people around us will always benefit, even if in the short term it doesn't feel like that.
So true. And I created this Cultivating Self-Love workshop and I just put it on again yesterday. And this is one of the things that we talk about quite a bit in this workshop, because we are conditioned to put others before ourselves as women. This is how like this is how we're conditioned. And so we talk a lot about that and being a good girl and all sorts of that
Yeah.
related stuff. And I'm really glad that you said that, because it made me think, just to add a couple of things, like, so especially my daughter, like my daughter has really been proud of me. She's told me in all of this that, like, you're my hero. Like, oh my gosh, I've watched you do all these really brave and courageous things. And you're amazing. You are amazing. And so she said these things to me,
I
which
have
just
chills all over my body.
yeah, and it's brings me to tears just to say it out loud. But then she was also the biggest, like, sort of pull or push or whatever on the relationship where there was kind of probably the most tension. And in fact, when this whole thing with this, I had mentioned there was a rocky road getting her to college, and it was because I won't co-sign the loans. And she's like, but everybody that she asked to co-sign her loans also said no, but she was only mad at me. Like both of
Isn't
her
that
grandma and
interesting?
yeah. My parents said no. The grandma on her dad's side said no. Her dad said no. And I said no. And I was having this conversation with her, and I said, Riley, it just doesn't feel like it's fair that everyone said no, but you're only mad at me. And she goes, but you're my mom. And I said, I get that, but like, what about your dad? And she goes, well, he's broke. And I said, well, I am too. And, because because I don't have my corporate job anymore. I'm not making that same kind of salary yet, and that's why I said I'm broke. And she said, yeah, but what did she say? What did she say? She said, but he has the choice, but you have a choice to not be broke. That's what she said to me. And I said, so does your dad, because he's not working and hasn't for like 20 years. And I said, so does your dad. And then she hung up on me. And so when we were able to finish that conversation, it was, Riley, I'm not going to go back into my corporate job, because I can see that's what you expect, because you would be able to do this if I was still in my corporate job, is what you're thinking.
Right.
And I'm not going to choose going back into my corporate job. I need to choose myself. And she had a really hard time with that, but is absolutely coming around and learning. And I feel like I'm setting the right example.
Yeah, absolutely. She will learn from that and know that it's okay to choose herself in the future. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad mom. It means that you have to, because what happens is, you say, oh, I could go back into my corporate job, but you really couldn't, right? I mean,
oh my gosh, no.
It gets to that point where you just have evolved to such a place that you actually couldn't do it, unless maybe unless you just couldn't put food on the table. But beyond, homelessness, and not being able to feed yourself, you probably really couldn't make yourself, because it would be so soul crushing.
Yes.
That really nothing is worth it. And here you are, having had the big corporate job and the stability and the money and all of the things that we think that we want. And now you have something different than that, where it's, less money and less stability. But where do you feel better?
Oh my gosh.
Right? Where do you feel more like your authentic self? Where do you feel more vibrant and alive and energetic and joyful and passionful and purposeful? Like, right?
All of those things and more. Like, I am walking on this earth more authentically than I have for 35 years. And I feel so good. So good. Like, part of this shift, especially with me and my wife, is that, like, now, especially after that coaching program we went through, Katie, like, I am operating at a higher vibration, period. That's it. And I need people to come and meet me. And so this is part of the thing that I go through in my Cultivating Self-Love workshop. It's like, when we rise, they rise with us. When we love ourselves back into life, they will too. Like, they'll come. We just need to support and love and provide space.
Yeah. And so many of these things come back to yoga philosophy. Like, when you again, talked about this was way back in the beginning, and I forgot to highlight this, but I wanted to come back to it, where you said you took this job at the mushroom farm, and then it wound up that I think you said the owner was abusive, and that you had experiences like that before in your life, and you recognized that, and you chose to step out of that pattern. That's yoga, right? It's self-awareness. It's recognizing the things that keep showing up in your life over and over. And when we can see them and then choose differently, we have elevated. We've elevated to the next level because we have more capacity now. We have more energy to be different in our lives, to see different in our lives, because we have stepped out of that lower elevation or lower energy pattern.
Yes.
So that's amazing. And then also what you're saying about like, my daughter, my son, these people in my life, my wife were upset about these things, but I had to choose myself is also a yogic philosophy, right? It's like, we're not going to be bothered by what anyone else thinks, does, or says.
Yes. We have to let people have their experience. And
Yes.
it's so hard. It's so hard.
Yes. And their
Especially for kids.
experience, even though they may direct it at you, the energy of that experience, the feeling of that experience, although they may be directing it at you, it is not your responsibility. It is not yours to hold.
Right. And that's a daily, well, minute by minute practice for me, because I'm not like, that it's up and down,
Yeah.
being
Because
able
it's
to
hard.
have
Yeah.
that detached, but yet, sort of loving space, like, because of lots of
Yes.
things in my
And you
past.
can
I
have,
used to be a control freak. So
yeah. Oh, wow. You really have come a long way. And you can have compassion for their experience, right? It doesn't mean that there's a cool aloofness to you. You understand that they are having their experience and it is difficult and painful for them, but it doesn't mean that you need to carry the weight of it with you.
right, which is what I always used to do. And then when everybody asked if I was okay, I'd say fine. And I was a
Yeah.
wreck.
Yeah. A wreck on the inside. Yeah.
And so I
Yes.
feel like like, again, I feel like it's the right example, even if it's not feeling so great for them in the moment.
Yeah, I totally feel the same way. My husband and I, so I've always been more of the free spirit in the relationship, and he
Yeah.
is he's an accountant, which pretty much says it all. He's like a classic accountant.
Yeah.
Very black and white, numbers oriented structure, likes
Right.
control, really, really. I mean, his title at his company at one point was he was the controller of the company. And I was like, oh my God, that is your title. Like, that is the perfect title for you. We jokingly in the family call him the fun killer because, every time we're doing something, he's like, whoa, slow down, be careful, don't do that,
Oh my God, that was me.
and we're so
Now
like, all
I'm
right,
like the
fun
free
killer.
spirit.
And then I've always been kind of the opposite, always seeking, a little bit more just excitement, a little off the beaten path, kind of a little countercultural,
Yep.
but also at the same time, totally buying into a lot of culture's expectations about what it means to be a wife and a mom and a daughter and what it means to be quote unquote good. And that, that death by 1,000 paper cuts was 100% me because I kept denying myself over and over and over again because I had all these messages all around me from people in my life that I loved and cared about, and they loved and cared about me. And I was listening to them and denying myself.
Yep.
And then it got to the point where I was so numb that I didn't even recognize myself. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what I thought or how I felt.
Yes.
And in this process of excavating my soul, I am finding out so much, but what's happening is that numbness is going away. That where I can't really feel like I feel like I should feel this. I should feel this deeper or with more passion or I should just feel more. I couldn't feel.
Same. Oh
And
my gosh. I love how you're saying this because you're putting into words what I haven't yet, I think.
yeah,
But
it's
I get it.
you get it, right? Where you're in an experience and you're like, why don't I feel this more? Like I should I should have strong emotions around this situation.
Yeah.
And
Like when I
yet,
first tried to turn my heart on, I couldn't feel it. And I'm like, oh my God, like I'm dead on the inside.
yes. And I
Yeah.
think so many of us walk around like that and we don't even know it. And now I'm finding that my heart is opening so
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
that I, the other day, I was listening to a song. In fact, I don't know if you listened to the content call for week 3 on the portal. This is the class that you and I are in together now. But she played this song and all she said was like, I think this is going to be an appropriate song for this week's lesson. And then she played the song. I am driving in my car, tears pouring down my
Oh,
face. I've heard this song a million other times in my life. Never ever have I even had the inkling of a tear to the
yeah.
eye. And all of a sudden, the tears are just pouring down my face because it's just resonating, just hitting me like a punch in the chest.
Oh, I love
And
it.
I couldn't feel it before. So that's what I want women to recognize. Like,
Yes.
it's not like I mean, maybe you have had major trauma in your life, and that is one thing. But there are many women out there like myself who I would have said, I've had a pretty good life. Like I had pretty good parents. My husband's great. My kids are good. I don't really have trauma in my life,
Hmm.
but trauma doesn't have to come in a gaping wound.
No.
It can come in these tiny cuts, and enough tiny cuts will lead to a gaping wound.
Oh, for sure. Like in all of the little micro decisions in the day where we are not choosing ourselves and what we want in our alignment, like it builds and builds and builds into this huge thing, like you're talking about. And then there's like all this negativity and resentment. Oh,
Oh, the resentment. Don't even
awesome.
get me started.
Yep. Yep.
And particularly, I think that resentment, a lot of times it comes towards our partners.
Yes.
For me, it definitely did because I felt like he's living his life. He's doing what he wants to do. This is what he says he wants to do, and he's doing it. And I am the one who's left living this life that doesn't even resemble who I am.
Right.
But I was putting that on him, right? I was saying that's his fault. He's not allowing me to live the life that I want to live. But it's not his fault.
Right.
I have ownership over my own life, and I
That's
get
a
to
big one.
choose. Yes, I get to choose. And what's really funny is we think we can't, right? We think we I can't do that. No,
I
if
know.
I can't. If I did, then this would happen and that would happen and life would fall apart. But when you start choosing, you realize that was just a limiting belief in your mind and you actually can choose and nothing falls apart.
Nothing falls apart. It might be challenging,
Mhm.
but then there's growth. Like that's what we're meant to do. We're meant to
Yes.
come here and grow and stretch. And yeah,
And once you start on that process of growth, you just can't stop. It's addictive to just keep growing and seeing where this wonderful journey can take you in your life.
exactly. Like it's like that. It's constant change. It's okay for us to be in this constant state of evolution.
Yes.
And I think that it's really hard for um, women, especially, but I think a lot of people, men too, um, to to change and move because we're also worried about like what box do you fit in and what label is on
Mm-hmm.
you and what are you and what do you do and I need to be able to compartmentalize you and then we feel like we can't change, right, with what's going on in our society today for whatever reason, conditioning and all sorts of other things. um and I think that's part of what has well, I know it is, felt so unstable for my family is because I'm in this constant state of change and evolution, like we are supposed to be as humans,
Mm-hmm.
but that we have not been living.
Yeah.
And and so um like that's again like I I'm doing what I'm doing, coaching and putting out this class and stuff because just like you with this podcast, like I want to spread spread this and help bring people help love people back into life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. I love that. Do you have a community? So we also talk a lot on the show about community, and I think it's something that just in the world, in America at least, I can't speak for other countries, that we don't talk about enough. And I think it's really, really important for our health and wellness, and particularly a community that allows you to be truly yourself, gives you the space to be in a constant state of evolution, and loves you through all the changes.
Mhm.
So do you have a community that meets that for you?
You know, somewhat, I would say. And I would also say I'm building it because for the last couple of years, have craved community and connection
Mhm.
so much. And so like I'm a Reiki master, and like, as we know, and so I've been putting on Reiki shares and, and doing other events to bring women together.
Mhm.
um, and I'm going to, things too. Whether it's at the local yoga studio or whatever, I'm definitely finding community. And through my new Cultivating Self-Love workshop, I really want to build the self-love club. Like I have a
Yeah.
t-shirt and everything.
Oh, cute. I love
Call it the self-love club.
that.
um, and so I'm working on that.
That's great. That's great. I mean, I definitely have it through my yoga studio, and even outside that. And, the nursing world can be very, it has a reputation for being catty and
Mm,
just little backstabbing and things like that. But I can say from my personal experience, I've worked on the same floor in the same hospital for almost 18 years now. And we just have an amazing crew that really supports one another. And
nice.
we are family. We're not just coworkers. We really just get to know each other on a personal level. And not everyone is kind of on the same path that I'm on, but yet it doesn't matter because we are just still there for each other. And I think that's when I say community, I mean, it is wonderful to have a community of like-minded people, and to be on the same kind of growth journey that you are on. And that's
Yes.
amazing. But it's also just wonderful to just have people in your life that you just get to know, and they get to know you, and then they feel comfortable about opening up about whatever struggles are going on in their life, and vice versa for you, and you can just have a conversation and feel supported. And even just getting to know, like, your mail carrier, right, or your UPS driver, or
Mhm.
your neighbors on your street. I mean, it's just having that human connection, I think, is so powerful.
Absolutely. And we all need it. And I think we're
Yeah.
starving for it. I will say in my journey, I have shed a lot of my prior, friends and community. Just because, like we don't like the same things anymore.
Yeah.
And I, the choice of conversation and things like that doesn't
Hmm.
resonate with me, and so I just choose to not be around it. It's part of my whole awareness of everything I consume. And you know you become the five people you're most around, and so I'm just being more mindful and choosy about who I'm letting in. um but yes, I love how you mentioned just even like neighbors and things like that, because that it all the connections help.
Yeah.
um
They do, but I do love what you just said also. I think that's a fantastic point, because we're talking about how when we change, that really shakes up our life. And we were talking about, our children and our partners, but also friends, right? You're
yes.
totally right. It could shake up your friendships because the things that are important to you have shifted, and what you want to talk about has changed, and what you're willing to, I call it your mind diet, to what you're talking about, where,
Mhm.
what you're watching, what you're listening to, the conversations that you're having, um, all impact you energetically, right? So at some point, you're just unwilling to even be around certain conversations that feel like they're going to negatively impact your energy.
Right.
And and that can be challenging with friendships.
Yes. And, I can say I've had a couple of, I don't know, small, shorter sort of moments of loss or loneliness or, things like that. But I come out of it right away because I feel so solid and strong in the changes that I am making and the path that I am on.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I need to shine my light, my
Yes.
authentic light, because then my tribe and I will connect and we will find each other. And so that's in the process of happening. But I do have like a close girlfriend or two that thankfully I'm have in my circle.
That's great. You don't need a ton of super close people when you have those people that are your people.
Yes.
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 I am assuming that you have some mindfulness practices or spiritual practices that you engage with on a regular basis. So would you share some of those with our listeners?
Oh, sure. I mean, meditation, first and foremost, is in my class, this workshop that I teach. I have 10 tools and practices that we go over. And meditation, I would say if there's anything you take away from these 10, I would say please start a meditation practice.
I totally agree.
It's life changing in so many ways. And so that's the big one for me. Just awareness of daily thoughts and daily self-talk. I'm constantly assessing where I'm at. And it's just become inherent now. It wasn't before. I was just unconscious so much of the time. So those are some things. I do self-love mirror work. I, of course, do yoga. Although my practice isn't as consistent as it used to be. So I need to really get that back. My body's feeling it. Mm-hmm. And then a big one is, and like, this is something we learned in the class we were in earlier this year, like that dropping of the codependency, that setting down what isn't ours to carry, that is huge. And that's just a constant practice.
Well, thank you for sharing all of those. Um, anything else? Anything else that you'd want to share with our listeners?
Well, just that I've been kind of mentioning throughout our conversation today, this workshop that I do on cultivating self-love. And so I'm going to be doing that monthly. So far I've done it in person, but I do want to take it online because I believe that we can still, have magical community and connection online. And so, I would just like the women who are coming through this workshop, they're gaining so much awareness and perspective. They're feeling inspired by the changes and by the class. They're feeling more open to receiving love after removing blocks. They're just feeling full and inspired and a shift toward being more compassionate and gentle toward themselves. And so if that sounds like anything that you would like, you're welcome to check out the information on my website, which is ReikiFlowMN.com, and Reiki is REIKI.
And do you also do Reiki sessions virtually, or are they only in person?
I do both in person and virtual sessions.
Okay.
And then I also am a certified life coach. And so I haven't had an opportunity to update the copy on my coaching page on my website, but up until just more recently, I was trying to narrow or figure out like, where do I want to focus my efforts in my coaching practice? And through the women that I've been coaching, it has become clear that sorry, I just totally lost my train of thought.
That happens to me all the time.
Oh my gosh. Sorry. Anyway, women are sort of lacking this self-love. So I've been doing a lot of work around that. That's one of the reasons why I created that workshop. And so but I haven't had an opportunity to update my page. That's really where I want my focus to be is on, helping women learn to love and choose themselves and shed the conditioning that tells us that we're selfish for putting ourselves first. And so, yeah.
I love that. Well, I will make sure that we get your website up in the show notes for sure. Is that the best way of finding you and contacting you? We could also put up your social media if you're comfortable with that.
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay. Okay. We'll put all the ways in the show notes
Thank you.
for people to find you.
Thank you.
Of course. And good luck with your upcoming move. And I can't wait to see all the things that you do.
Same. I'm excited to see what you do too, Katie. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, thanks so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.